Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
And I'm Stephen Park, and I think I gave my sickness to Jamae.
Yes, I am now feeling it, so if my voice sounds different, now you know why.
Which probably happened because one of our love languages is touch. And that's what I kind of want to go into, is because this book seems to really show a lot of different ways of showing affection and how each relationship tends to bond with another one. But let's start with the love languages, because I don't know if everyone really knows about this topic.
Yes, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with the 5 love languages, just so y'all know, it was created by a pastor, so it is very religious based. If you're interested in reading the book, if you are sensitive to that kind of topic, then maybe reading the book is not for you. But if you're willing to skip over all the religious portions, it really is a very interesting way to view how you interact with others and how others interact with you. So the 5 love languages that are outlined are touch, words of affirmation, gift giving, quality time, and
acts of service.
And acts of service, yes. So, what are your love languages, Stephen? So first, how do you like to receive love?
So this was funny because we talked about this initially in our relationship, and I remember when I wrote it out, I think my prioritization was physical touch. No, I think it went quality time, physical touch, then acts of service, gifts, and then words of affirmation. Then I think it might have been 2 years when we got into our relationship.
Yes.
I brought up the fact that I think because I was being fulfilled on the needs of quality time and physical touch that it actually changed.
Yeah.
And so I think it then went to quality time, acts of service, gifts, then physical touch, then words of affirmation.
Totally. So that's how you receive love now.
That's how I receive love now.
I feel like gifts have a higher place in your love languages in terms of receiving, at least from an outside point of view, and as an outsider who is also your partner. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And I think it's a very ingrained Korean part of me. I think a lot of times when different households meet up or you go and meet friends, it's about paying for the meal. It's about, oh yeah, did their kids have this toy? Maybe we should go. Like, that's how my mom always was. So I think that got transferred to me more than I thought that it did.
That's fair.
So what are your love languages of receiving? How do you receive your love languages?
Totally. Very similarly to your experience, when we first took the online test, it listed touch as my highest, then words of affirmation, and then quality time as my top 3. And I still hold to that those are very important to me. But recently I've been rethinking about how I receive love and how I would like to continue receiving love in this present time. And I think words of affirmation have gotten higher, and in that, even though I know my own worth and I know that I am valued and valuable, I just need to hear it sometimes. And to me, that's what makes it my higher love language now. Especially when I look back at my childhood, I didn't get a lot of words of affirmation. My parents, particularly my mom, did say I love you, but I was never told, the words I'm proud of you or we're proud of you have never come up. They've always shown it, which is why acts of service is definitely something that I feel fulfilled in. But to hear it is different. It feels like the bow on top of the gift. It's like, this is truly how we feel, even though I know that's how they feel. Or at least I hope that's how they feel.
Which is interesting. So the reason why my words of affirmation are so low is kind of the same reason that you're saying that you value words of affirmation so much.
Totally.
Is because my parents rarely would tell me things that like they're proud of me or I did well, even though they did. Like for me, I think I've gotten those words when I did the things that they wanted me to do, but it wasn't something that was highly valued. Like my parents wouldn't say I love you to each other. I don't think I've heard that too many times. On the flip side, even though you haven't received those words from your mom, your parents are very affectionate with each other.
Right.
And they do tell each other that they love each other all the time, I think.
Yes, they tell it to each other, but that I think that's the difference. With your parents, they don't tell it to each other. With my parents, they tell it to each other. With your parents, they tell you.
Mm-hmm.
With my parents, they don't tell us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting in that they're very opposite kind of situations.
Mm-hmm. And it could be that for me, I have gotten that part fulfilled enough that I don't need it, which is the same reason why I think that's the reason why gifts have shot up in the way that I receive affection, is because nowadays I've stopped asking my parents to give me Christmas gifts. Like me and my brother, like we don't do Christmas gifts anymore because what it ended up being was just us exchanging money, like just exchanging cash, and there was no point in it. But I think from that standpoint, now I don't do gifts with friends, I don't do gifts with family, so the only person to give me gifts is you.
Wow.
Well, you and your
so much pressure.
Your family actually gives us a lot of really thoughtful gifts.
They do.
Oh, what is that word? The packages that are sent? Care packages.
Yeah, the care packages, like pasalubong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do send us a lot of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that speaks to our culture in that regardless of whether you're far away or if you're close by, anytime that they think of you or they do something, at least in Filipinx culture, they want to give gifts to those that they love. And sometimes beyond those that they love, like their coworkers who they could love, but I mean like those who are around them constantly.
Yeah, and actually now that I think about it, my mom does give gifts, but through the efforts of her acts of service. So I told you about this when my brother used to live in Vegas, and we're from Southern California.
Yes.
And so when my parents would go visit him, my mom would prepare for 2 weeks 2 giant coolers full of frozen foods. And so those were technically gifts, but I mean, if you saw the way that she worked in the kitchen, they were definitely acts of service.
Absolutely.
And she told me that she would want to do that for me every time we come home. Anytime I fly back to Portland from home, we always get pulled over at security because she always gives me something frozen.
Yes.
Then there's water because it condensates.
Right.
And then I have to get the bag swabbed every single time. I think we now plan out an extra 15 minutes just to get that check done.
Absolutely.
But it is her show of love. It's definitely her show of gift giving and the way that she just wants to show that, that she cares for me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. I'm definitely working on it. Even though growing up, my parents didn't give us gifts, and even now, it's kind of hard for us to give each other gifts in special occasions outside of those pasalubong moments. Like when we're giving as care packages or giving because we're thinking of you, that's different. But when it's like Christmas or a birthday or I don't know, fill in the blank for the holiday, it becomes more. It feels, to me at least, it feels less genuine because it's like many people are giving gifts at this time of the year. And plus, I'm a minimalist, and when I give gifts, I tend to think about practicality, and practicality does not always read as gift giving, so I'm working on it.
But like you said, I think it's the difference between obligatory gift giving versus like when your sister goes and is shopping at Ross and she sees a sweater or a dress or something that you might like or that I might like, then the dress is for me, the sweater's for you.
Yeah.
But she will grab that for us and then like kind of build it up and then send it over all together. So
Right.
it's the thoughtfulness. It's not the money behind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way that we've kind of worked on, because our birthdays are really close together, our holidays are going to be the holidays, so they're always on the same day.
Yes, the holidays that we celebrate.
Right. So then the way that we've done gifts now is to put a cap, like a money limit on it, so that we can really try to be extra thoughtful on what we're giving. And for me, the way that I receive gifts, it's not about the cost of something. I mean, it'd be great to get something that's worth a lot, but that means less to me than someone thinking about me and saying, oh, this is something that I feel like you don't have, or something that I think that you would really enjoy because I know you as a person. So it's more of that being in someone's heart, I think.
Totally. So would you say that your way of showing love is also gift giving?
Yes.
Totally.
Absolutely. I love giving a gift that hits the spot perfectly. When someone is genuinely excited about the gift, I think that means the most to me.
Totally.
I hate buying cards because I think that they always get wasted. But I will spend a lot of time just trying to think, okay, what is the perfect gift? Like, was there an inside joke? Was there something that they said that might insinuate that they want this?
Yeah.
I hate when I give a gift that is asked for, because I know that that's what the person wants, but especially in this era of we can order anything that we want at any time.
For sure.
For me, it means less. It just means I did the bare minimum rather than giving you a $10 gift of shock and awe and being like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, cute, whatever it is.
Totally. It's that feeling that comes with it. For sure. I think when it comes to my way of showing love, it's words of affirmation. So very opposite. I think cards to me are the way that I can show love because I'm very thoughtful and observant, and words come easier to me than actual like products. And like, although I do love gift giving, and I also like the fact, or I also love when people have that genuine joy of receiving a gift, but I feel like for me, the way to show how I love is through those little observations and writing them into the card and showing that I'm actually paying attention.
I feel like for my gift giving, it's actually, I kind of take it back. I don't think that my gift giving is the way that I show love the most. I think it's the acts of service. It's the things that I do, and I think gift giving is a part of that. It's I go into research mode and start looking at things, so it's less about let me just go buy you something and give it to you. Right. It's more about how do I find a perfect thing. Then there are the other things like let me do this for you. If you're feeling sick, let me make this for you. If you're feeling down, let me go buy ice cream. So even though it is a gift that's being given, it's the thought that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly where my words of affirmation come from, like the thought that counts. Like I definitely have trouble producing or giving like a physical item, but like words come easier to me, and I try to be more thoughtful in like putting those two things together, like specifically for you with gift giving. I'm trying to like figure out that happy medium where my strength as well as your love language can both coincide.
Yeah, you do a good job.
Thanks.
So it's not necessarily the only way to look at your relationship, but I do think it gives insight on how one person might feel better, or give reasoning to why there might be some dissonance in the way that two people show love to each other. Not always. This isn't the end-all be-all. What I can say, it was enlightening to me when I first saw this, and it really helped me start to realize how we can kind of grow our relationship more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only for romantic relationships, but this can also apply to platonic relationships, familial relationships, your relationship with your friends, or like the way you relate with others overall. Right.
On a different note, we are going to talk about our recommendation for the week. So, Jamae, what you got for us?
So, this week, I wanted to recommend some music for y'all. For me, although I love to work with lo-fi music, who else loves lo-fi? Shout out. But what I've noticed is that I've also been listening to a lot of R&B and genre-bending music. So, here are my top 3 that I've been listening to lately. One is Umi, who is an LA-based R&B and neo-soul artist. The second is TT, who is Portland-based and a genre-bending R&B artist. And the last one is Twee, a Bay Area R&B artist. So, we're gonna include all of their links in our description, but if you like R&B, if you like music where you can just sit and listen and enjoy, especially Umi. I think y'all would enjoy Umi because if you go to her website, she actually gives you a guide to set you up and get you ready to listen to her newest album, and then gives you guidance even into each song. So, I hope y'all will check them out or at least give them a listen.
So that's Umi, UMI, TT, THY, then Twee, Twee, THUY. And that's our recommendation for the week.
So, this is the third round of Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. To give a recap of what we've read so far from chapters 1 through 12, we've already been introduced to all the main characters, establishing both the Richardsons and the Warrens. And we've seen that focus on the mother-daughter relationships, for example, with Elena Izzy, with Pearl and Mia, and then Bebe and May Ling / Mirabelle, and the McCullough. So that's a whole thing. And then we also had many instances of microaggressions and racism that have been sprinkled in, and even more apparent than I thought when I first read through it. We've also seen, at least in the past couple chapters, a lot of babies and baby making, from adoption to conception to abortion. So, this week we read chapters 13 through 16, and oh my gosh, there's just so much that has both already happened and are happening.
Yeah. So I think the first things that I want to talk about are chapter 13 and running into about halfway, if not all the way to chapter 14 from what I remember.
Yes.
Which is what I title Mia's story.
Yes, exactly.
So this is where we get that full picture of who Mia is.
Right.
I think until now we haven't even really discovered who Mia is as a background character. She seems to pop in and out of scenes very often. She's the person that's at the house cleaning. She's Pearl's mom in the house when the kids come over. Like, she seems very much a character that's in the shadows rather than someone that's up front.
Yes.
But we know her story's pretty big.
Yes, exactly.
And so this almost seems like an introduction midway through the whole book. And it's a big one. I mean, it really goes through her entire timeline, and definitely for a reason.
Totally. It rips back the curtain all the way from the very beginning, like Steven said, starting from when she was growing up with her parents and with her brother Warren. And I didn't realize when I first read through the book how much was dedicated to Mia's story.
Right.
The whole paragraph and a half, and even chapter 13, like, it is such a dense chapter.
Yep.
But what I think is interesting is that Celeste Ng has such a way of making the story still move forward, even though we are going back in time.
Yeah, and with Mia's story, I felt like I was trying to actually look for things to talk about, but only because Celeste seems to do such a good job of telling the story so completely through.
Yes.
There are very little questions that I had. It seems like any questions that I might have, she answers through different methods.
Exactly.
So it seems like Mia's story is just put out there, like, on a platter. It's just open right in front of us.
Right.
And it's so clear.
Right. And it's interesting to see the progression of Mia's story, starting with photography and how it was because she and her brother Warren were starting to grow apart, starting to find their own interests, and photography was a thing that caught her eye. And then going into art school and finding Pauline Hawthorne, and Pauline encouraging that love, but not only the love, but noticing how talented Mia is and was since back then.
Yeah. So let's break down that story a little bit. So we start off with her growing up. It seems like any other normal childhood. Her parents are described as people that grew up in an era where they've been bare minimalists. Like they really needed to scrounge for things. They didn't have a lot. But I think the other thing that was said in this story was that the kids never wanted. Like the kids were very cared for.
Yes.
So as they're growing up, we see Mia and Warren kind of growing closer and closer together. And like you said, they started splitting off because Warren started doing more sports.
Yes.
And so this is when Mia started picking up photography. So she starts taking more and more photos. And what ends up happening is that one of her neighbors catches her. So Mr. Wilkinson.
Yes.
Then after a year of watching Mia go around and play with a camera, like for me, I was just trying to think of the time of a year is a really long time to see a kid constantly just go after a task.
Right.
Because kids usually fall out of things so quickly. So for Mr. Wilkinson, I can see why he was so curious about what Mia was doing.
Right.
So he brings her in, and then this is where I think her art and her photography blossoms.
Right.
One of the things I wrote in my notes is that he's one of the good ones. He is someone that doesn't see her as a girl that needs help in the terms of looks down upon her.
Right.
But he sees her as someone who's talented and wants to provide resources for her.
Exactly. And not because, I think she can benefit and I will be beneficial to her, but just seeing that he can guide her in the way that she is hoping to blossom into, because she also brings those. He first asks her for her photos,
Right.
and when Mia brings them to Mr. Wilkinson, he sees where she was going with an idea and knows how to help her with that idea. And so the guidance and more of a apprentice and an expert kind of relationship rather than a benefactor and a beneficiary kind of relationship.
And I think in this whole book, what we see with Elena and the way that she looks down on Mia and Pearl, the way that we see the McCulloughs look down on Bebe, I think the biggest thing that was told was what was not heard, which is Mr. Wilkinson not looking at Mia and saying, you need my help, you need this. What he says is, hey, look at this photo. This squirrel's blurry. Were you trying to take a photo of that squirrel? Let me try to help you out.
Yes.
And then it's not that he says you need my help, but let me try to help you develop. And it almost seems like a question of if you want it. Like, not you need to have this to get better, but I have resources. Here's my camera. No, I'm not going to give it to you. This is something I'm lending to you because I believe in you.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think another part of this quest for Mia, not only is she getting help from Mr. Wilkinson, she also realizes the limits of her art in terms of her family. On page 194, it says that Mia realizes she was crossing into a place she would have to go alone. And I think that set us up to anticipate what was ahead for her, at least in this time period of Mia's life. Right.
This is the crack that starts the separation a bit from the people that she knows.
Yeah, she knows and loves. I also think in this era of her life, the fact that Mia already notices that to her parents, work was something where you can fix or make something useful, and if it didn't have a use, they couldn't make out why you do it. So also delineating why she knows her parents aren't going to understand. But also, I felt like that resonated with me because for me, I am more of a creative. I am more of an artist. And you know that about me, Stephen. So I totally understood where she was going, where, especially in the U.S. society, if it's not a doctor or a lawyer or something that helps a particular industry, then it's not something that's worth pursuing, or at least in the general population's eyes.
And that's where Celeste used the word practical, which I think the way that Celeste built that word up and showed the very brief background of her parents and what they might have had to go through so that they needed to be practical shows that neither side is wrong. It's just different.
Yes, there are two different ways, or multiple different ways, but those were the two different ways that were presented to us in this book.
Right. So speaking of her parents, Mia then kind of continues to dive into her photography, which then sends her to school, which her parents thought that she'd choose the quote-unquote practical decision of going to a close-by college.
Right.
But then goes to New York to go into...
art school.
Right, art school. From here, one of the things that I really found interesting was that Mia took away so many traits from her parents to then use that to build who she is as an artist and as a person.
Yes, absolutely. Like, although she was in art school, her jobs was where she was able to use those practicalities that she picked up from her parents. Like with the
businessmen, she would look at the way that her mom used to treat patients and make sure that each one felt individually recognized.
Right.
And that's what she did with them, chatting them up about their lives, remembering their orders and preferences, which helped her get extra tips. She also anticipated the needs of these businessmen, which got her more tips. From her dad, she learned the ability to wield tools, which then helps her use that as media for her art.
Yes, exactly.
From her mom, she used cloth as media for her art. So really goes directly into what helped her grow as an artist and as a human.
Right, definitely. It gave her a way to not only find agency for herself, but to build up other people around her.
Right.
Then, during art school, she does meet a particular professor, Pauline Hawthorne, who is already well-known and established then, which is why when Mia first enters her classroom, nobody questions the way that she starts class, which is to not address anybody, to just go straight to the projector and start just pressing slides and going through them one by one. No words. And I can't ever think of a professor who's ever done that in my class. So to think that these college-age entrance-level students are going to sit and just look at slides for a full hour and a half, like, just blew my mind. And...
Wait.
Yes.
Did I tell you about my neuropsychology professor in undergrad?
No.
Okay, so my neuropsychology... off topic.
Go ahead.
So my neuropsychology professor in undergrad was this world-renowned researcher and professor. I don't want to say his name just because I don't want to put it out there like that.
Yeah.
But he created this theory that's so well known that it's been featured in multiple movies, it's been featured in multiple movies. It's been used worldwide as a treatment method for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I enter his class. It's a once-a-week 3-hour class. Super excited to learn from this guy.
Yes.
The first day we're there, the TAs stand at the front. Everyone's sitting in class. They turn on a video of this professor speaking and doing news segments. And I swear, it had to at least be an hour and a half or 2 hours into the actual class. That then this professor walks down from the back of the lecture hall all the way down to the front, wearing the exact same clothes that he was wearing in the interview that was currently going at the time. So, side note, not all showing projectors are good. I think Pauline is a great professor.
Totally.
Not always great to show projectors and movies. Anyway, sorry. Far side note, but Mia then meets Pauline Hawthorne.
Yes, and Pauline notices Mia's talent from the very first photo that they bring into class. Pauline asked the class to bring in the photo that they're most proud of. And from those first photos, she already notices Mia's talent. And I think that she notices Mia's talent because she pauses and asks, who is Mia Right? And then giving her specific questions of, like, why did you choose this angle? Why this line? And Mia, acknowledges that she didn't really have any other answers besides it looked right, it looked right, it looked right, or it felt right.
Which is exactly how she addressed a lot of Mr. Wilkinson's questions initially.
Yeah.
So I think that was the carryover of that was her first teacher, and this is her next big learning experience. Yeah,
yes,
mentor.
Absolutely. And it becomes such an important relationship that Pauline asks Mia to come over and to like learn more about her work and figure out how she can better help her, knowing that she is a gifted student.
Right. And this is where the relationship then blossoms between Pauline and Mia. But to be honest, I thought there would be a lot more in this. With how important it seemed that picture was when the kids first went to the museum, I thought Pauline and Mia would have this massive connection. I mean, they might have formed something really big, but it seemed kind of brushed over a little bit.
I think that the fact that Mia acknowledges that she had so much pride, that Pauline and her partner Mal were both willing to even let her stay over, to ask her over to dinner, to be willing to give her a loan later on. So I think that there was so much love from Pauline that carried towards Mia, but Mia was so proud and wanted to get through life on her own, which is where we meet this snag.
Right. And what's the snag?
The snag is that although she entered the art school with a scholarship, a year later, the scholarship said that they will no longer be funding her, which I think is wild. What were the terms and how can they pull away from those terms so quickly?
Well, it sounded like the scholarship being pulled back was because of a larger funding issue. So I don't think it was the school just keeping that money for themselves. It sounded like they got cut that amount of budget.
Mia was now in a place where she can no longer afford to go to art school, but she still wanted to. That's when the Ryans come along.
Right.
In which Mr. Ryan stalks Mia from the subway all the way around New York. I think that's kind of creepy.
That's what I wrote. I wrote, is it creepy that he did that? Then, when Mia goes to meet Mrs. Ryan, you remember what Celeste wrote is that she looked like she was looking at her own reflection?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what Mia was thinking at the time.
Right.
But my first thought when that happened was, is that not really creepy that they sought out this girl that looks exactly like his wife?
Right.
Is that with the hopes of the baby looking exactly like the wife as well? I don't know. I thought that was super creepy too.
Yeah, I think that was the point of Joseph Ryan tracking Mia and seeing that she looks so much like Madeline, his wife, hoping that the baby that would be produced would look just like them, essentially. But yes, it's a fully creepy situation. And although I'm not speaking from experience, nor am I speaking from a place of knowledge, but what I have heard about surrogacy from people who've either known others who've experienced surrogacy or just from my own quick Google search. Surrogate mothers are usually chosen because they've already borne children before. And that's so they know that they can carry the child to term. But Mia hasn't had any children. She's very young also. And the fact that she's in college proves even more risk. Because Mia doesn't seem like she's a party girl, at least in what we've read. But that's all aside. The fact that she's a young college person who's never born children seems like whatever agreement they made with her is kind of null and void.
Right. So not only is she someone who hasn't born children, later we find out that she might be a virgin.
Right.
So not only has she not birthed children, she's never had intercourse. She's never, I think the words were like, felt the touch of a man or something.
Yes, exactly.
So that's even weirder, I think.
Yeah, so it's like, I understand that the Ryans had this real deep need for a child. I am not yucking anyone's yum, but there could have been different ways they could have gone about this situation. And I acknowledge that during this time, maybe not a lot of people were considering giving to this family because of whatever biases.
But not only that, but there weren't... Surrogacy was not, I think, as well established as it is now.
Right.
There were no test tube babies or things like that at the time. I mean,
they said that it started off as test tube babies, but they did not want to go that route.
Because it was too dangerous.
Not because it was too dangerous. It sounded like it was more like a, ooh, I don't want to go that route. Not like a, I'm afraid.
Because I thought they had written that the first one had happened, and I thought it was after the date of when it was now.
No.
Okay.
No.
So to then go into the story, because to speed through it a little bit, Mia then meets the wife, Madeline, and they go through the whole process. She thinks back and forth. Eventually, she decides that this is what they want to do. Pull out the turkey baster, put it on a plate, warm it up, throw it in, squeeze it, 20 minutes legs up.
30 minutes.
But eventually, this happens, right? She goes
conceives.
through, she conceives, and no, is conceive giving birth?
No, to conceive is to create.
Oh, she conceives. But this is where I think the story gets a little bit interesting, because for me, this marks the timeline where the true separation between Mia and her parents, and Mia and even Warren starts, and which then leads to a much bigger thing.
Right. What's interesting also is that at the beginning, she was only agreeing to helping the Ryans because she needed the money. They were well off. They were gonna give her money. She would be able to continue art school after her hiatus, was her thought process.
Which is also really messed up, because if she had come from a place where money wasn't an issue, she wouldn't have to do any of this. This wasn't a thought that would need to ever come along.
Right.
Then it comes the question of, would she ever be separated from her parents? Would she have had the separation from Warren the way that it happened? So all in all, this lady is working 3 jobs.
Right.
She's just trying to make it by. She just wants to go to art school so that she can learn. And still that's not enough, because society has not given her the tools that it takes. So then she has to use her own body to find a way to create those earnings.
Exactly.
Super messed up.
Exactly. And like, even before she decides to agree to the Ryans, she did say her womb was not an apartment for rent. She could barely imagine having a baby, let alone giving one away. So I think that was a way to signal what would happen later.
Right.
Which is, unfortunately, while she was out of school, while she was still gestating this child in her womb, unfortunately, even though they weren't on good terms, Warren had passed.
Right. And just before Warren had passed, Mia had told Warren that she was pregnant with this baby.
Yes.
And because of the way that that conversation had gone, Mia and Warren had stopped talking to each other.
Exactly.
Not because they disliked each other, but because of the fact that Mia felt like the conversation was too uncomfortable to keep talking about.
Right.
And she saw a future where then she could just talk to Warren after she had the baby, gave it away, and then she'd keep the baby.
Yeah.
But...
Keep the baby, or sorry,
to give away the baby.
And then just live life afterwards.
Yeah, like nothing had happened.
Exactly.
But I do think this part about Warren's passing ends up being a big catalyst for why she wants to keep eventually Pearl.
Yes, exactly. When Warren passes, her parents call her, lets her know. She immediately, without thinking, goes back home, which then causes even more of a rift, because now her parents have a visual of what's happening, because Mia is fully pregnant by this time. And because Mia is fully pregnant, her parents kind of leave her out of things now.
Because they're trying to hide her.
Right, they're trying to hide her. They say that they don't want people to get the wrong idea. They make decisions without her, even in closed quarters. And as it says in the book, the last straw for Mia was when they said that she couldn't even attend her brother's own funeral.
Right. And I think that was such a big hit for her.
Yeah.
Because when we started chapter 13 was when Mia's mom was pregnant with Warren. Mm-hmm. And Mia specifically uses the terms of, that's my baby.
Yes.
And the fact that she had then lost her quote-unquote baby had to have hit her hard.
Right.
And that, I think, leads Mia to have to reconsider this whole decision of giving away this baby.
Exactly. And I think also the fact that one of the last words she hears from Warren is, I'm that baby's uncle. It wouldn't be that easy for me to give the baby away.
Right.
Might have just hammered it home and was like, no, this baby's in my body. My body is not for rent. This is my baby now.
Right. So then leads us to what happens afterwards. She runs away from her parents' house. Mm-hmm. That is technically the last time her parents have
seen her.
Right. And she goes... Does she go back to school first, or does she then run to California?
She does go back to school first. But immediately... Well, okay. She doesn't go back to school. She goes back to the apartment that the Ryans gave her.
Right.
And then she immediately packs her things, leaves behind everything the Ryans have given her, writes a note, lying, saying that she lost the baby, and then leaving behind $900 and saying that I feel like I owe you, this is all I can give, and then leaving behind everything, just taking what's hers and taking the car that Warren used to use, which is the Volkswagen Rabbit.
Right.
And travels cross country until she can travel no more when she gives birth to Pearl. And I would just like to point out how when she was thinking of a name for her child, the fact that she comes up with the Scarlet Letter, knowing that the name Pearl was such a wholesome name, but coming into troubling and complex circumstances, I think was such an interesting choice.
Well, it was such a great note to put in by Celeste.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To parallel the stories of the I can't remember her name, but the lead from the Scarlet Letter to Mia's.
Yes, absolutely. So she gives birth to Pearl.
With her last name being?
Warren, because of her brother.
Which is such a sweet moment.
Yes. And then also leaving out who the father is.
Right.
Making that conscious decision to only write her own name, Mia Warren, instead of Wright. And... yeah, not even mentioning the Ryans at all because this is her baby.
Right, because this is her immaculate conception. She doesn't really have...
any relation, essentially.
Yeah, with her stalker.
Yeah, with her temporary stalker. So she gives birth to Pearl. She does have trouble at the beginning raising Pearl as a baby. She does have this, I guess, grumpy roommate, Mrs. Delaney, who one night does help her, takes Pearl and, allows Mia to sleep for that one night. And then later doesn't ever do that, but still gives her quote-unquote leftovers.
But that's because she was the landlord.
Right.
She gives the leftovers as a way of saying, hey, give me my monies.
Right, but then I think Mia also mentions how she understands that when Mrs. Delaney says leftovers, that she's actually making this for her.
True.
That it is a gift, but she is reminding her that it's not for free gift.
Yes, give me my monies.
Yes.
And so then we get the call from Mal.
Mal saying that if you want to see Pauline, you need to get here right away.
Right.
And so Mia gets a ticket flies back to New York, spends time with Pauline and Mel for as long as she could. And it does say that this is the first and last time that she is ever a guest in their guest room.
Mm-hmm.
And one morning, when Mia was nursing Pearl, Pauline shuffles into the room, tells her, no, it's okay, I want to take pictures of both of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Mia says goodbye to Pauline, gets back to San Francisco, Mel tells her that Pauline has passed.
Mm-hmm.
And later she gets a package of photos of her and Pearl when Mia was nursing Pearl. And the note in the back is from Pauline saying, if you ever need money, sell these, contact Anita and send her your work when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
She's expecting you.
So 7 photos.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go through the story, she ends up selling the first one
Mm-hmm.
when she is trying to pursue her dreams,
Mm-hmm.
but just needs a little bit more time, a little bit more money.
Exactly.
And that one gets her, like, how gangster is it that you take 7 photos and that's selling for millions of dollars?
Right.
Anyways, she sells that one enough that she doesn't feel like she needs to sell another one until Pearl gets pneumonia, which is just like kind of a side note of like, oh yeah, she sells the second photo because Pearl has pneumonia.
But then that reminds us in the beginning about how Mia promises Pearl after that sickness that they're gonna find a forever spot instead of moving around,
right.
which is what brought them to Shaker Heights.
Right. Also, to relate, these are the photos that are then, or one
this
of
is
these
one of the photos
that was then put into the museum
mm-hmm.
that is so sought after by Izzy and Elena.
Yes, exactly. Whew. Yes. So, that's kind of where Mia's backstory kind of ends, and it wraps us back up to the present where Elena Richardson is still talking with the Wrights, Mia's parents. And I think it's interesting that the one point that Elena feels guilt is
mm-hmm.
when the Wrights offer photos of Warren, and I'm like, really? That's when you feel guilty? This whole escapade of digging into Mia's past and lying
mm-hmm.
to the Wrights, none of that made you feel bad?
But she did feel guilt. I mean, in that first view of the meeting that we saw,
mm-hmm.
I was pretty upset that she had no guilt over any of this.
Right.
So the fact that she even feels any guilt is it's a decent sign.
I feel like it's too little too late.
But then this is also where she gets the business card for the lawyer for the Ryans,
mm-hmm.
which is then what she's going to dig into to find out about the contract that was drawn up.
Right, exactly. And we don't know much more after that yet. In Shaker Heights, though, what's happening was Lexie was getting an abortion,
mm-hmm.
and we are now seeing the after effects where Pearl is bringing Lexie to the Winslow house, and Mia swoops in and takes care of Lexie and is like very motherly and caring and nurturing.
Because she knows.
Yes.
She knew from her pale appearance, which how white was this lady? She was probably already pale. She knew by the way that she entered the house with the pads. She knew the entire time.
She did. And that just goes to show how observant Mia is, not only as the Richardsons' housekeeper, but just as a person overall.
Mm-hmm. Then while Lexie is being taken care of and Mia is helping her out, Mia then is able to spend some time with Pearl, mm-hmm. because Pearl can no longer sleep in her own bed.
Yes.
So,
no, Mia can't sleep on her bed because Lexie is sleeping in Mia's bed.
Yes. So they are now being able to spend some time together.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Mia starts to think about, okay, if this happened to Lexie, is this happening to you?
Mia, yes.
But is it happening to you with Moody?
And Pearl is using lies by omission, telling
mm-hmm.
Mia that everything with Moody is just friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is that when Mia tries to interject saying, I know how it goes, Mia realizes for herself, like, she's never felt this way before.
Mm-hmm.
She's never had romance that way. She's all from childhood until college, and even after that, she's never felt that spark outside of photography.
Right.
Which I think is where I realized, it solidified for me when I first read it, that Mia must be either asexual or aromantic or both.
I don't think so. I think she probably wants to find that kind of romance. I don't think she's had the time. Like, where is she gonna ever find that ability to go out on a date when she has Pearl? She doesn't have any money initially. She's just trying to find a place to live. She has Pearl. She's trying to take care of Pearl. I don't think she has the opportunity to then find someone that she can grow a relationship with.
But romantic feelings don't ever need specific time. Like, you can feel romantic feelings for another person even though you can't.
But who is she sharing that romantic feeling with? Because when we talked about how she met Bebe, that was the only person that she really had somewhat connected to, because she always felt like she was a transient. I think that's the sad story of Mia, is her entire life she's working to give Pearl this life. At the same time she's struggling just to get all that done. So I don't think she has the time to even care for herself. She might be asexual. She might not care about that stuff. But truly, I don't even know if she's had the time to discover that, because I don't think she's had the ability to have those experiences.
But I think, so I hear what you're saying, that she's working really hard, but that only started when she was in college. She already said that as a child, where she had everything she needed, she still didn't feel those feelings. And I feel like that's where it starts, especially when you're 13, 14, 12. Those hormones and having those feelings just come, whether or not you're studying really hard or not. So the fact that she already says that at that time she didn't have those feelings, and now when she has Pearl and Pearl's grown up and still doesn't have those feelings, and she's had the money and time and space and still doesn't have those feelings, I think that, to me, shows her asexuality or aromantic or aromanticism.
And this is where I think the literature leaves it up to interpretation. I don't think one's more right than the other, but it's just however you interpret Mia's life is how you interpret it. But with this, we do know that one of Mia's love languages is touch. Because it talks about how Mia and Pearl used to always be in touch in the carrier when she was a baby. And this was the scene that I think it talked about how they had disconnected physically, which for Mia, my assumption is that also meant that they are disconnecting emotionally.
Maybe like having a different connection, maybe not complete disconnection, because like we said in the last episode, how Pearl realized that the way that she brought up the subject of the photo was not the way that she should have. So I think there is still that connection, but there is a little more like disconnection in certain aspects, but not completely.
Oh yeah, I don't think because they're still talking to each other.
Right.
Pearl still cares about what Mia thinks when she brings up Moody, which is why she doesn't want to lie, but she sees this window of lying by omission. So it's not like she wants to hurt her mom.
Right.
But I do think Pearl is growing up.
Yes.
And this is where the relationship of mother and daughter is changing. It's growing into something different.
Right. And I think Mia knows that, but she's still like trying to find those moments of connection still.
Right. I also think it's really interesting that within these last few chapters, we have now seen Lexie and Izzy both go through different struggles, and at both times Mia has come in and cared for them as her own children.
Exactly.
She gave Izzy the sandwich, which was meant to comfort her. She spent all this time with Lexie, wrapping her up, caring for her after this abortion.
Yes, and calling the school to prevent the robocall from contacting the Richardsons.
Right, and this then brings up the question that was asked at another point in this book of what makes or defines a mother. Because Elena is obviously providing for the children.
Right.
Or Mr. Richardson, but as a duo, they're providing for the children. But Mia is now providing for the emotional and physical care of the children.
Right.
So does that mean that she's the mother? Like, I think when we then go into the story of Bebe and the McCulloughs and what is a mother, because this is what's going to be talked about in trial.
Exactly.
This is an interesting parallel that Celeste does of trying to then define motherhood.
Yes, exactly. So it's not to say that Mia is the mother, but it's also become a question of, well, at least not for us, but for Elena, who keeps putting herself on a pedestal saying that I'm the better mother. The question now is she truly a better mother than Mia?
And the thing is, she doesn't even realize it. Like, she has no idea what these kids are going through.
Exactly.
She's off interrogating and exploring while Mia is here taking care of her children.
Yes, exactly.
So then we go into Bebe's story.
Right. The hearing, or at least the week of hearing between Bebe Chow and the McCulloughs, who are Linda and Mark, trying to figure out who should gain custody of May Ling, or otherwise known as Mirabelle. Yeah, and how, like, people's idea has been changing, like, specifically Lexie, since going through the abortion, her ideas have changed. But also, what's interesting is that Celeste Ng includes just the last hearing, where Mr. Richardson is glad that no one else can see, because it's family court, because Miss McCullough is brought up as a witness, and some of the things that she says were alarm bells in my mind.
So, to go on the other side of that, the person interrogating her, Ed Lim.
Yes.
Applause.
Yeah.
I am Ed Lim stan. This dude went into this interrogation so hard.
Yeah, so ready.
Yes, whenever Mr. Richardson saw Ed Lim smile, he knew things were going to happen. So to highlight some of the things that happened in court and some of the stupid things that Miss McCullough said, was Ed Lim asked, "What have you done to connect May Ling to her culture?" Do you remember what Miss McCullough said?
I wrote 3 different things down. She said that they go to this Chinese restaurant so that she says Mirabelle can grow up feeling this is natural. And I was like, girl, no.
The quote is, "The Pearl of the Orient is our favorite restaurant."
Oh, dear Jesus.
Number 2.
She talks about having this teddy bear heirloom and choosing among a brown bear, a white bear, and a panda, and thinking that Mirabelle is going to feel more connected to the panda.
And then the number 3.
She was so confident in saying that they do have Chinese literature, but this book is the 5 Chinese brothers, which depicts them as wearing pigtails and slanted eyes, and they all look the same.
Yes, so Miss Cullough, the direct quote that she says when Ed Lim is interrogating her says, "They all look alike. I mean, a lot like each other. They're brothers. They're part of the story. No one can tell them apart." Really?
No.
Then Ed goes into the details of the pigtails, the slanted eyes, and the coolie hats. And she still, I don't think she really gets how racist that is.
How problematic it is,
So I think an interesting thing that Celeste decided to include here was a very quick glimpse into Ed's backstory.
Right.
Because Ed also has a daughter.
Right.
And she talks about how he struggles to provide culture in the way that white kids tend to get culture.
Right.
One of the things are dolls.
Yes.
So when Miss McCullough is talking about her dolls, she says, "Most toys are blonde and blue eyes. Quote unquote, that's just the default."
Yuck.
Quote unquote, it's not anything racist. They just want to make a generic little girl, one that will appeal to everyone.
No. Yuck.
The way that Ed breaks this down to get her to say all these things and for her to not even realize that it's problematic.
Oh.
Love Ed Lim. So one of the hard parts to hear, I think, was Bebe's struggle to care for her baby.
Right.
Which goes into the point that the McCullochs are trying to make, that she's not a fit mother.
Or was an unfit mother.
Right.
But because of those experiences, they're claiming that she is not a fit mother now.
Which, for me, would all be solved if she had resources. So,
right.
If this was not taking place in Ohio, if Bebe and her husband had initially moved to somewhere like LA, San Francisco, Atlanta, New York, somewhere that had areas and communities of Chinese people.
Where they could find the resources and access them.
Yeah, and understand where to go to get welfare and other...
food stamps and other social work.
Exactly.
Social care.
Because everything that she could not provide, which was like breastfeeding, because and her last bit of money she uses for formula,
right,
having to reuse diapers, like these were what they deemed made her a bad mother.
Right.
This only showed that she didn't have money. It didn't make her a bad mother. She used everything. Last bit of what she had to give to her daughter. And how does that not make a fit mother?
Exactly. And the only reason why she left May Ling at the fire station is because she knew that she wasn't in a mentally stable place and wanted to bring her to a place where she can be cared for.
Right. It was to protect and possibly even save the life of her daughter.
Yes, because if she continued to keep May Ling, who knows how long it would have taken before she would have found resources.
Yes. I think that's the most of what's been written in these chapters so far.
Right.
There is one point I wanted to make, which is, it goes on a slightly separate topic, but Lexie is now starting to sympathize for Bebe.
Yes.
Which is what you had mentioned. While they're having this discussion, one thing that Miss Richardson says to Lexie and Izzy, specifically noted as Lexie and Izzy, in a room full of all her kids, is, quote unquote, and that's why pregnancy is not something to be taken lightly. The issue I had with this is that you are not saying anything to the other half of the issue.
Right.
You didn't tell your boys, one who is extremely sexually active, that this is also an issue that he needs to take. You take the responsibility off of the male, and we need to train your sons.
Right.
Like, this is such a big issue of what's happening right now. Train your darn sons to take responsibility for what they're doing. Teach them that they are just as much a part of the issue. If having children at that time is an issue, they are a part of the issue. It is also their job to take that responsibility and that role.
Exactly.
It is not all up to the women.
Right.
And as Miss Richardson, being someone who comes from this quote-unquote idyllic community,
right,
I can see why she thinks this, because this is what she is born and raised to think with patriarchal societies. But she needs to teach her sons that this is not okay.
Right, exactly. And yeah, when I read that part, it was very disheartening that she calls out her two daughters and not including her sons, or not like fully addressing the entire issue. Like you said, it is not supposed to be only the women that takes this responsibility.
Yes.
So not only does Elena say those things to her children, but once the children were going off to bed and it was just her and Mr. Richardson clearing the table and cleaning up the kitchen, we can see that Mr. Richardson is rethinking the way he's viewing the Bebe and McCullough situation. He asks Mrs. Richardson, do you think that Mark and Linda really know how to raise a Chinese child? And Elena, in her
Elena-ness,
says, quote, she'll be raised in a home that truly doesn't see race.
Yes.
Ugh. Sometimes I think that we'd all be better if it were that way. Maybe at birth, everyone should be given to a family of another race to be raised.
Yes.
Maybe that would solve racism once and for all.
Yes.
Ugh. Yuck.
Yes.
No, so much wrong. That is, I don't even know where to start.
I know, such big things to happen in so little words.
Yes. Like, no, it is society and the way that it's been built. It's the systems within that society. It's not just a lottery where we can throw children however and whichever way. Like, I don't think she realizes that she's also putting herself into that mix. Like, would she willingly give her children to somebody else? No.
I mean, she kind of is at this point. Mia's raising her kids.
But she doesn't know that.
I know.
She still thinks that she has this power over her children. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't have any stake in her children's lives, but she doesn't have the same stake that she thinks she does.
Right. I'm not going to lie. Celeste, you got me with the racism.
Ooh.
It hit hard. It's been my favorite parts of the book. I've been eating it up. I appreciate it. But that kind of leads us in this penultimate section, and we are now approaching the end of the book.
Yes.
Which is only 3 chapters.
Yes.
Chapters 17 through 20, pages 270 to 336.
Yes.
Even though it's only 3 chapters, I feel like these are going to be some long chapters.
They're going to be long. So, again, knowing what I know, it's going to be fiery. What else do you predict?
I mean, clearly this story of the abortion is going to pop up because we know that Lexie put Pearl's name on that sheet. I think that comes back. There's no way that doesn't. I think showing that Mia is now starting to play a motherly role in the lives of Miss Richardson's children, Elena's children, I think that's going to come up, and there's going to be a clash between lionesses. The Bebe and the McCulloch story has to end somehow.
How do you think it'll end?
I hope Bebe gets the kid, but I don't know. This is Ohio. I mean, if I were to be honest, I never remember the colors, but Republican Ohio, racism, white people. I think it ends in the way that McCullochs get the baby, but I hope Bebe gets the Bebe.
Bebe. Her name's Bebe.
Bebe gets the Bebe. But yeah, I mean, we won't know till we find out. So
yes. Oh my gosh.
We got 3 chapters to go.
Yes.
But if anyone wants to chime in on what they've read, what their opinions are, if they want to share anything, how can they do so?
You can email us at asianbookclubpod, P-O-D, @gmail.com, or find us on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
And we also have a bookshop where you can look at our other suggestions and books that we're reading.
Yeah.
That's going to be at bookshop.org/shop/Asian Book Club Pod. All right. And for now, we close the book on these chapters.
Bye.